And yet they were able to marvelously, magnificently carve these giant statues out of diorite.
That's exquisite.
Now, they try to explain it by people with a little bit of sand over their whole life, just polishing one area. But you could not polish it with that precision. No. Sir Flanders Petrie, the great British archaeologist, in the 1880s, he found irrefutable evidence that they used some kind of saws to cut. And you know, when you use a drill, it leaves little grooves.
Yes.
And in some things, there were grooves that they found. And in stone, they found evidence of saw marks. Now, contemporary people will say that they used a copper chisel and hammers. Impossible. Because that would be like saying that you used a chisel of butter to slice through steel or cut diamonds. It's impossible. They had to use some kind of high-speed circular saws. Now, I was just on the Giza Plateau, and they tried to say that the way they broke these blocks apart was wedging in wood and soaking with water and fire and it would crack. But here is about an 8-foot cut, and inside you see the unmistakable saw marks that they were sawing down through it with either a circular saw or a long saw.
Now the contour.
Yes, this is just south of the large pyramid near the funeral complex on the Giza Plateau. You will notice that this is a straight edge, and it's over here is a radial curve, and it is precise all the way down. It is machined in some way. How they did it, we don't know, but this is of red granite. Now, the sarcophaguses that are 8, 9, 10 feet long, made out of single blocks of granite. Now, we could move the granite, but we cannot carve it the way they carved it. Inside, Sir Flanders Petrie found evidence. You know, when you use a circular saw cutting through wood, if you move it like that, it'll go past the saw mark if you're not careful. But if you use a hand saw, you're not going to go ½ inch past. You'll stop at the mark.
Yes.
Inside some of the sarcophaguses, they found high-speed evidence of circular saws that cut beyond the mark, and they backed out and they filled it in. Not only that, we can make something flat, but if you use a special instrument and shine light underneath it, light will go underneath it.
Yes.
Some of the sarcophaguses show that you cannot put light underneath it, that it is perfectly formed. How they did that, we do not know.
Ahead of their time.
Now, here's an example of core drilling. This is the Flinders Petrie Museum in London, England. And this is a core. When you use tubular drilling and you drill down, it'll leave the marks on the side, the spiral serrations and symmetrical concentric grooves. This shows the grooves and the symmetrical spirals going down on this core. And here's one near the Aswan Dam that goes straight through. You can see the little grooves. Yes. So they use some kind of tubular drilling. In a little while, I'll show you a vase. I have two artifacts from Saqqara, Egypt, from 600 to 800 BC of the vases that they carved out of diorite and granite. And you will see the spirals on the inside and the tube where the little button is when you use core drilling. Now, what's very interesting about it is they carved down through these. When you use a drill, it has a certain feed rate. The feed rate here is 500 times faster. Inside of the granite and the diorite is quartz and feldspar. It's harder than the diorite and the granite. But if you use ultrasonic drilling, as you go down through it, it'll set up vibrations and synchronization. And the quartz will vibrate 30 to 50,000 times per minute in harmonic synchronization with the ultrasonic drill. And so when it hits the quartz, it'll go through faster. And that's what we find in this unfinished vase that I have from Saqqara.
Again, ahead of their time.
Also, nobody today would attempt to make a diorite vase. Now, we can use a double-sided tungsten bit diamond on both sides, water-cooled, to drill a hole, but we can't form and shape it.
No.
Not only did they form these bowls out of diorite and granite, but they shaped them. If you look down there, where we cannot make a bowl where you can set it down there and it has a little beveled at the end, it'll fall over. but they knew how to make it in such a way that it is equal weight on all sides.
Marvelous.
And there's no evidence of tool marks. And
Marvelous.
when they drilled down through it with this precision impossible, some of them, they put miniature hieroglyphics on the bottom. We have to use a microscope to read what they put on the bottom.
Ahead of their time.
Ahead of their time, way ahead of their time. In fact, I have a couple of these vases. This is diorite right here, this vase, which is in mint condition, 1600 to 1800 BC.
Marvelous.
This was the most prized objects of the Caesars. Pliny the Elder, the Latin historian, in 79 AD wrote that Nero bought one of these for over $750,000 American dollars.
As a museum director and curator, I'm very interested.
And another Caesar paid over $2 million American money to get one of these vases. I actually prayed
ahead of his time too, before they had American money.
I prayed one time. I said, God, I'd like to have some of those vases. And I heard his voice say, in my spirit say, you shall have them. And a couple of days later, in a miraculous event, I ended up getting 2 of these vases.
That's incredible.
And inside,
That's
you can see the grooves.
Yes, I can see them.
And they go all the way down, and then there's the core at the bottom.
Yes.
So this is an unfinished vase from Saqqara, 1600 to 1800 BC. And the Romans prized them, the Caesars, because they could make things out of marble, but they couldn't make things out of this diorite and granite.
That is incredible. That's astounding. And here you have it on the program. Now there's more for this audience to see.
For instance, the discovery of King Tut's tomb in 1922.
I've been there. I've been inside his tomb.
Howard Carter was the archaeologist, but he also was a spirit-filled, charismatic Christian, felt he was led by God to this discovery, even wrote a book on spiritual gifts. But Howard Carter, when they came there, they found some vases. Now, this is interesting because during the same period of time, the Hoover Dam was being built in America. There was going to be high-voltage electricity carried. And GE, General Electric, had a laboratory with Espy as the head. And Dr. Espy had tried everything, every type of glass, every type of material to carry high voltage, but all the voltage would be destroyed. It would destroy the objects.
Yes.
And Hoover called him and said, the dam is going to soon be finished. Do you have this solved? And he said, not yet. And he went upstairs and he began to pray, and God showed him the miracle at Cana, and the Lord spoke to him. He said, like the stone vases, you will have an answer. And they took a vacation for a month. And one of his employees went to Egypt. And he came back, and he said to Mr. Espy, he said, well, I went to Egypt during my vacation. He said, what'd you do? He said, there's a new discovery, King Tut's tomb, and I have a piece of ceramic from a stone, from a vase, from a bowl. And Espy said, that's it. And they used the ceramic, the material, they studied, they used it when they bombarded it, when they bombarded it in the laboratory, it could withstand the high voltage. And it was that material that they studied and began to make to have the insulators and conductors for high voltage. That's why we have electricity that's flowing into this place today to see this program.
So the Egyptians invested in us, and the Spirit of God reminded a good man of that activity.
And so we see evidence too, and I brought several necklaces and carnelian stone. The ancient pre-Columbian people too, and the Egyptians, had an ability to do minuscule drilling through quartz. Not myopic vision, but so small that they could put thin threads through it. And this shows that they had some technology of carving. Again, we have to use double-sided tungsten steel bits in order to cut through. Now, this is Ramses II, his mummy.
Poor fellow.
You know, he lived to be 94 years of age, had 73 children. You know, the oldest woman on record to have a baby in modern times is 68 years old. Yeah, the baby looked just like the father, bald, toothless, and wearing diapers. But he lived to be 94. Now, buckets of scholarly ink have been spilled over who was the Pharaoh during the Exodus. We may be looking at the face of the Pharaoh, Ramses II.
Could be.
His sightless eyes, they may have dragged him out of the Red Sea. But what's curious about this is that when they took his mummy to help preserve to a better state to Germany, they did C scans and they found that he had a nose job during his lifetime,